I've completely skipped leg days for the past year, haven't done any squat patterns, and I've committed many more leg training since, which people would deem me to have chicken fucking legs if they would hear that, but surprisingly enough, my legs have never grown this fucking big. Lazy leg training works if you know what you're doing. So first of all, I'll explain the programming principles that I've used to allow me to skip leg day, to keep you hooked. Then after that, I'll explain the only few necessary leg exercises that you need for the rest of your life, so that you don't have to waste your time doing unnecessary bullshit. And at the end of the video, I'll give you 3 sample programs so you can apply all of this info right away and thank me later for freeing up more time for more enjoyable things than a fucking leg day. All you need is one intense set. Seriously. The first set of a given workout gives you the absolute biggest stimulus. You need 5 additional sets just to match the stimulus of the first set, as the dose-response relationship isn't linear, but it falls off after like the 3rd or 4th set, meaning that if you take advantage of higher frequency training and get that first most stimulating set as often as possible, you can work yourself around doing a whole ass leg day with 1 billion exercises, with 1 billion sets, and you can focus more of your attention and energy to your upper body, which you probably want to do if you're watching this video. I get it, bro. I'm the same. But first, let me explain why high frequency training is crucial if you want to be a lazy fuck with your leg training and you simultaneously want to maximize your muscle growth as best as possible for your upper body. As I explained, you maximize the frequency of the first most stimulating set, you minimize the time you spend in atrophy between your workouts, meaning that when you hit that first most stimulating set, when you repeat that workout as often as possible and not just waiting a whole week to train your legs again, like in a bro split, you essentially cancel out your body's mechanism of muscle atrophy, meaning that you're constantly piling up that stimulus of that first set as often as possible, instead of getting a big stimulus of like 10 sets, 1 time per week, and that whole stimulus fading away because you're not training frequently. Muscle atrophy happens really quickly, and you want to stimulate your muscle as often as possible without annihilating them, especially if you want to be lazy with your leg training. If all of this was too complicated for you, I'm gonna dumb it down as best as possible. A person who trains muscle more often will grow more. If you train your legs 1 time per week, you get 50 chances of growth within a year. If you train them 2 times per week, you get 100 chances of growth within a year. And if you train them 3 times per week, you get 150 chances of growth within a year. Now let's get into the fun part. Which split can and should you choose to train with high frequency and be a lazy fucking fuck while still growing your legs? So there are 2 main options that I would advise you to do. The first option would be the full body split if you want to train 3 or 4 times per week. And the second option would be a push-pull full body split if you want to train a bit more often, 4 to 5 times per week. Just to clarify, the push-pull full body split is essentially just a push-pull leg split, but you take out that whole leg day, which we don't want, and you split your leg day into a push and pull session essentially. Quads on the push day, hamstrings, glutes, etc. on the pull day. And for these splits to work in your absolute best favor, you need to understand exercise sequencing and importance of it. So when you have a full body workout or a push-pull full body workout, the exercises at the very start or near the start of the workout are the absolute most effective, as you're in a fresh state, there's no fatigue existent, meaning that the muscle groups or the exercises that you put near the start get you the absolute best stimulus, meaning that if you want to prioritize your upper body and not your legs, you want to put all of your upper body stuff at first and just tackle on your legs at the very end of the session with just a few exercises, which I will talk about right now. The squat compound is completely, bear with me before I get cancelled, completely unnecessary, and you just need leg extension for your quads if you want to grow your legs in the most efficient way possible or at all. Your muscles, or your quads specifically now, when you train them, only care about the specific muscle function that they perform, and you just need to load that. So the quads only perform knee extension. And in the leg extension, you literally have that. It's literally in the name, just knee extension. But when you do a squat pattern, you have a bit of knee extension while also including hip extension into the mix, which includes the adductor magnus and also the glutes into the equation, meaning that you take away stimulus and motor recruitment from the quad specifically, and you distribute that stimulus through the quads, adductors, and the glutes, which you could think is a good thing because compounds are time efficient, don't have to do a bunch of exercises, but you're wrong, because you need to include a hip hinge somewhere in your program to have a thick looking back and also to develop your whole posterior chain effectively. And a hip hinge ticks all of these boxes that the squat pattern does, but better. And again, if it ticks that box and you need to do it, why would you do a squat then? Just do a leg extension. You will save a lot of time because you don't have to load up so many plates, you don't have to be absolutely gassed after doing a squat pattern. And on top of that, a squat pattern doesn't even hit all of the quad muscles. The rectus femoris is completely shut off due to antagonistic inhibition as you're extending at the knee and moving at the hip, which is not good for the rectus femoris as it crosses both joints. And if it shortens and lengthens at one joint, blah, 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 don't need to know that. It's essentially shut off and won't get any stimulus. The leg extension, or an exercise where you just do knee extension while your hips are in a fixed position, is the only exercise that will effectively hit the rectus femoris. Just ditch the squat pattern, okay? Coming to the hip hinge. A hip hinge hits the adductor magnus and the glutes, and on top of that, it also hits the hamstrings depending on the hip hinge that you're choosing, which makes skipping squat patterns even more optimal because a squat cannot hit the hamstrings as a hip hinge would. So there are two specific hip hinges that I recommend for time efficiency and also for effective overall growth without neglecting one muscle group, blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. So the back extension is the absolute best hamstring biased hip hinge because your knees are in a locked position, which is very important for the hamstrings, as you don't want to bend into your knees like in an RDL, as that just with the rectus femoris and the squat pattern shuts the hamstring off from doing the work and puts that work into the glutes. And the resistance profile of the back extension is also the most preferable for hitting the hamstring as optimally as possible. But if you don't care about your legs and hamstrings that much, the next best bang for your buck exercise to get a thick fucking back and to hit the adductor magnus a bit better than the back extension would is a deadlift variation. I think I don't have to explain myself a whole lot. A deadlift at the very bottom has so much torque on the spine itself, and your erectors have to work so fucking hard isometrically to keep your spine from fucking breaking into two fucking halves, which makes it an absolute goat if you still want to tick these boxes of hip extension, hitting the adductors, hitting the hamstrings, glutes, blah, 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 but you just want to get a thick fucking back. But let's say you do want a bit more hamstrings and you just don't want to do back extensions. The next best option is just a modification of the stiff leg deadlift via using a rack to your advantage, essentially doing a rack pull. You want to set the pin height to like mid-shin level to lower kneecap level, essentially cut off some range of motion at the very bottom, because if you go lower than your normal, natural hip extension range of motion or just bending over, the adductor magnus has the best leverage there and takes over the movement from the hamstrings. The spinal erectors work all the way through, which makes this rack pull variation the better option if you want a bit more hamstring growth, or if you just want to feel like OG Alpha Destiny.
God damn!
A hip hinge or hip extension movement hits only the upper region of the hamstrings, which means that you need a hamstring curl to hit your whole hamstrings again, but most importantly that lower region, which only crosses the knee joint, meaning that it is not hit in a hip extension or hip hinge movement, making the hamstring curl very necessary compared to something like a squat pattern for the quads. Yes, we want to be efficient. Yes, we don't want to train legs, but you need these two movements, sadly. For simplicity, any leg curl movement will do. Don't have to worry about seated, lying, blah, blah, blah. Just know that the seated hamstring curl is the absolute goat if you could choose just one and you have it available, because it hits the whole hamstrings just like a lying hamstring curl. But due to you bending over and essentially being in that bottom position of a stiff leg deadlift, you slightly hit those upper regions of the hamstrings, which you also hit with a hip hinge more than you would in a lying hamstring curl. But on the other hand, a lying hamstring curl hits that lower region of the hamstrings a bit better, while not hitting those upper regions as good as the seated hamstring curl. I just want to yap about that and explain it so you know that I know what I'm talking about, but just to any curl. The adductors roughly make up 30% of your whole leg, so you need to do adductor specific isolation movement with the good girl machine, because the adductor magnus gets hit with a hip extension or hip hinge movement, while all of these other adductor muscles, which only perform adduction, do not get hit with that hip hinge movement. Of course, you do not want to have tree trunk legs, too big of leg. Rather, we are just doing one set every few days. Okay, you're not doing a whole leg day with a billion sets. Your adductors will not get to Hadi Chopin level if you just do that, okay? Chill. Your adductors will make your leg look so much better. You will not end up with chicken legs. I skipped adductors for the past few months because I was naive. My adductors shrank because, as I said, muscle atrophy happens really quickly, especially if you take out the whole movement pattern, like adduction. Even though my quads have grown, my legs still look a bit slimmer because the adductor, again, is 30% of a fucking leg. And if 30% of a fucking leg is missing, they will look a lot smaller. But you can see that as a good thing. You just have to do like one set every now and then of the adductor machine, and your leg will look 30% better than it did before. But if you're really short on time and you don't give a fuck, or the adductor machine hurts, as it does for me sometimes, you can just do isometric holds in the contracted position. Isometric training builds roughly just as much muscle as isotonic or normal strength training where you go full range of motion. Again, this is not me saying that it is superior, but it is a good tool to use if you are happy with the slightly suboptimal or equal stimulus while saving a lot of time and effort, because you don't have to warm up a whole lot. You can just press that shit and you're done. Here's a quick isometric warm-up and execution guide if you want to try it in your next session. Let's talk about calves. You might think to yourself, bro, I don't give a fuck about my legs. I want to be lazy. I don't want to do this. I want to skip this as everybody else. But I will tell you, if there's one muscle in your leg which you should not skip at all costs, it is the calves. The golden era guys were known for having relatively smaller legs compared to today's competition, but they had huge calves. They had calves that almost matched the size of the upper leg, relatively speaking. And due to those calves being so fucking huge, even if their upper leg wasn't as big as they are today, the whole leg looked so fucking aesthetic, and even more aesthetic than the small calf and the big quad look, or the absolutely no leg chicken leg look. Like, what the fuck is that? You don't want that. And if there's just one calf raise exercise that you can do for the rest of your life, it would be the straight leg calf raise, specifically on a leg press machine. A straight leg calf raise will always be better than a bent leg calf raise, as the bent leg calf raise only hits the soleus and not the gastroc, and the soleus is beneath the gastroc, meaning that you don't actually see it, while the gastroc is, of course, visible, and you want to develop the gastroc. And the straight leg calf raise hits the gastroc and the soleus, while mainly focusing on the gastroc, which again is the most important part of the calves which we want to develop. The leg press is not only the most available for all of you, but it is also the most effective, even more effective than any standing calf raise machine there is, because you are fucking locked in due to your hips being in that position and the pad behind you and blah blah blah. It is much more stable, and you don't have to worry about like stabilizing the body in space compared to something like a straight leg calf raise machine where you're standing and your hips can move all over the place, especially if you lose a lot of weight for your calves, which you will do. I'm talking too fast. Just do your straight leg calf raises, okay? Now, putting all of this information into an actual program which you can use, this is how it would look like if you want to train with a full body split. First, we have the straight leg calf raise, as I explained. Calves, most aesthetic muscle, most important muscle. Then after that, second exercise, we will have a hip hinge variation, because a hip hinge will make your back look fucking thick, okay? And as a byproduct, you will also hit your hamstrings, glutes, blah, blah, blah. So we want to prioritize it a bit more over other more isolated leg exercises. Then third place, we will do a seated hamstring curl. If you have that, if you don't, just do a normal hamstring curl. Hamstrings are most often like underdeveloped, and most people and the quads are overdeveloped. So we want to slightly disbalance it out. And also, if you do the seated hamstring curl before leg extension, which we'll do after that as a fourth exercise, the hamstring curl warms up the knees and makes the leg extension or any squat pattern, which we want to, but any quad movement, feel much more natural, much more smoother for the knees. Then as the fifth and last exercise, you want to perform an adductor machine, whether that's a normal set or an isometric, do what you want. All of this for just one set in the 4 to 8 rep range. Absolutely ball busting intensity at the very end of every single session. As I explained, the exercise at the very start of the session, most important, best stimulus, blah, blah, blah. Upper body stuff there, and the leg stuff, because we don't give a fuck about that, at the very end, okay? Here's the second option. If you want to train with a push-pull full body split, we will keep the same exercise order due to the reasons explained, but we again split this up into a push and pull session, and you maybe don't want to do just one set. One set would be the absolute bare minimum if you really don't give a fuck about your legs, but you want to maintain your legs or you slightly want to grow them. The better option would be 2 sets per exercise here, okay? The third and absolute most laziest option, which I only recommend you to do if your legs are really well developed, is to train again full body, but have an A-B rotation for just your lower body, okay? You want to hit your quads, like in that push day, for the A rotation, and essentially have that pull leg day on the B rotation. This will allow you to hit your legs 1.5 times per week, so slightly lower than 2 times per week, not having to do 5 exercises for just one set, even if that goes by very quickly on the full body split via again splitting those exercises up into 2 different sessions while keeping all of your upper body stuff on both sessions. Getting that frequency for the upper body will allow you to maximize your upper body growth while saving up a lot of time for your lower body, meaning that you can actually stick to your full body sessions, because I know full body is very tough and the sessions can get 2 to 3 hours long if you want to maximize everything. This will allow you to do that much more efficiently. If you want to get rid of analysis by paralysis by watching all of these videos and you just want to get to your goal physique in the most efficient and effective way possible, make sure to check out my one-to-one online coaching service in the description and comments down below. See you, brother, in the next video.